From Crypt 2 USK, the air in the sarcophagus tasted of rust and lilacs. Lucius the Flawless opened his eyes beneath violet light bleeding through the crystal lid, the same light that had bathed him when Fulgrim first pressed the blade into his palm 10,000 years ago. His armor, once the proud white and gold of the Emperor's children, now shimmered with 1,000 shifting hues, every scar a deliberate flourish, every dent a stanza in the poem of excess. The lid slid aside with a sigh that sounded almost like pleasure. He rose. The chamber was a cathedral of mirrors, each pane reflecting a different decade of his face. The young paladin who had knelt before the Emperor, the duelist who had carved his name into the flesh of 1,000 worlds, the thing that had learned to smile while it screamed. Somewhere in the distance, a choir of captured astropaths sang in frequencies that peeled skin from bone. Their voices were not words but sensations. Wet silt dragged across exposed nerves, the scent of crushed orchids blooming in a throat full of promethium. Lucius inhaled. The scent of Elysium 9 reached him even here, buried beneath the crust of a dead moon. Crushed orchids, promethium, and the copper tang of fresh blood. Slaanesh whispered in the hollow behind his tongue. Go, perfect them. The words were not heard but felt, a vibration that started in his molars and ended in the soles of his feet. The teleportarium flared. A dozen noise marines materialized in perfect synchronization, their sonic weapons already humming with anticipation. Their armor was a riot of color, peacock feathers fused with ceramite, gold filigree shaped like screaming mouths. Their leader, a creature named Voxevran, knelt and offered a helm shaped like a screaming cherub. The cherub's eyes were real, still blinking. Lucius took it, turned it once in his gauntlet hands, and crushed it to powder. Too crude, he said. The powder drifted between his fingers like violet snow. We are not here to kill. We are here to improve. The noise marines rose as one, their movements fluid, almost dance-like. They had no need for words. The music in their blood was communication enough. Lucius stepped into the teleportarium's light, and the world dissolved into static and perfume. They stepped onto the surface of Elysium 9 at dusk. The planet had once been a paradise world, rolling meadows, crystal rivers, a population bred for beauty and obedience. Now the meadows were carpeted with bodies arranged in spirals, rivers ran red, and the sky itself pulsed with the heartbeat of the warp. A single Imperial bastion squatted on the horizon, Fort Seraph, home to the 117th Cadian shock troops. Its searchlights stabbed upward like accusatory fingers, cutting through the violet haze. Lucius smiled. Begin the overture. Voxevran raised his doom siren. The first note was soft, almost tender. A lullaby played on flayed vocal cords. It drifted across the plain, slipping beneath doors, through ventilation shafts, into the dreams of sleeping sentries. Men woke with tears on their cheeks and an ache behind their eyes. The second note followed, sharper, a scalpel of sound slicing away restraint. Officers found themselves humming along. Sentries lowered their rifles to conduct invisible orchestras. Inside the fort, Commissar Elias Varn was cleaning his chain's word when the music reached him. He was a hard man, forged in the fire of a dozen sieges, but the melody curled around his spine like a lover's fingers. He shook it off, slammed a fresh power pack into his bolt pistol, and strode into the barracks. On your feet, you worthless dogs. The enemy is at the gates. The guardsmen obeyed, but their movements were languid, almost graceful. One private began to waltz with his lost gun. Another traced patterns in the dust with the tip of his bayonet. Varn shot the waltzer through the knee. The man fell laughing, blood bubbling between his teeth like champagne. Platoon leaders report. Varn barked into the Vox. Static answered, laced with a woman's sigh. Outside, Lucius walked alone across the killing field. The noise marines had fanned out, their weapons now silent. They did not need to fire. The music was doing the work. Lucius carried only his sword, the latter blade, its edge still wet with the memory of Fulgrim's tears. Every step he took left a footprint of blooming roses that withered instantly into ash. He reached the outer trench. A young lieutenant stood there, helmet under one arm, eyes wide and glassy. "Sir," the lieutenant said, voice trembling with wonder. "The music, it's beautiful. Lucius laid a hand on the man's cheek. The skin was fever-hot. "Beauty is pain refined," he murmured. "Let me show you." The lair blade whispered. A single cut, precise as a lover's kiss, opened the lieutenant from sternum to navel. The man gasped, but it was a sound of ecstasy, not agony. His intestines spilled out in perfect coils, arranging themselves into a treble clef on the ground. Lucius stepped over the corpse and kept walking. The main gate of Fort Seraph was unguarded. The portcullis had been raised by the sentries themselves, who now stood in formation, rifles raised in salute. Lucius paused beneath the archway. Above him, the Aquila had been defaced, its wings sawn off, its head replaced with a porcelain mask weeping black tears. "Welcome," said a voice from the shadows. Commissar Varn stepped into the light. His greatcoat was unbuttoned, revealing a chest crisscrossed with old scars. In his left hand he held a data slate, flickering with casualty reports. In his right, a power sword that hummed with sanctified rage. "You're late," Varn said. "I expected you hours ago." Lucius tilted his head. "Perfection cannot be rushed, Commissar, but I admire your anticipation." Varn's lip curled. "I know what you are. I've read the reports. Lucius the Eternal, the duelist who cannot die, the cancer in ceramite." "Flatterer," Lucius spread his arms. "And you are the last note of dissonance in my symphony. Shall we dance?" The duel of Dird Varn lunged. His power sword carved a blazing arc toward Lucius's throat. The traitor parried with the flat of the lair blade, the impact sending a shower of purple sparks into the air. They fought beneath the violated Aquila, steel singing against steel, each strike a stanza in a duet of violence. Around them, the fort was transforming. Guardsmen had begun to paint the walls with their own blood, creating murals of impossible beauty. A tech priest coupled with a servitor in the motor pool, their union birthing a machine demon that sang binary hymns. In the chapel, a priest nailed himself to the altar, arms outstretched, weeping oils of myrrh. Varn fought like a man possessed by duty. Every thrust was textbook, every parry economical. But Lucius fought like a poet, every movement extravagant, every feint a flourish. He toyed with the Commissar, drawing the duel out, savoring the rhythm of it. "You feel it, don't you?" Lucius whispered, their blades locked. "The music in your blood, the need to be more." "Shut up," Varn snarled. He headbutted Lucius, shattering the traitor's nose in a spray of violet ichor. Lucius laughed, the sound like breaking crystal. They broke apart. Varn's breath came in ragged gasps. Lucius's face was already knitting itself back together, the cartilage reforming with wet pops. "Look around you," Lucius said, gesturing with the lair blade. "Your men are free. Free of fear. Free of pain. Free to create." Varn glanced over his shoulder. A squad of guardsmen had formed a human pyramid. Their lost guns fused into a single grotesque instrument. Another had flayed his own face and was wearing it as a mask, dancing a jig. "They're dying," Varn said. "They're ascending." Varn roared and charged again. This time Lucius did not parry. He stepped into the blow, letting the power sword pierce his chest. The blade erupted from his back in a fountain of gore. Varn stared, horrified, as Lucius leaned forward until their faces were inches apart. "Thank you," Lucius whispered. "That was exquisite." The lair blade flashed. Varn's arm, sword and all, fell to the ground. The Commissar staggered back, clutching the stump. Lucius pulled the power sword from his own chest with a wet sucking sound and examined it. "Crude," he said again, and snapped the blade in half. Varn fell to his knees. Blood pooled beneath him, dark and shining. Lucius crouched, cupping the Commissar's chin. "Tell me, Elias Varn, in all your years of service, have you ever felt alive?" Varn spat in his face. The glob of blood and phlegm struck Lucius's cheek and slid down like a tear. Lucius smiled. "Good. Hold on to that. It will make the crescendo sweeter." He stood. The Noise Marines had entered the fort now, their weapons silent, but their presence a pressure against reality. Voxeverand approached, dragging a chain of bound astropaths whose eyes had been replaced with speakers. Their mouths moved in silent screams. but the speakers emitted perfect harmonies. "Maestro," Vox Severance said, bowing. "The choir is ready." Lucius raised his arms. The fort's Vox system crackled to life, hijacked by the traitor's sorcery. Across every speaker, every comm bead, every dreaming mind on Elysium 9, the symphony began. It started with a single note. A child screamed stretched to infinity. Then layers upon layers. The death rattle of 1,000 worlds, the wet slap of flayed skin, the laughter of gods who had forgotten mercy. The music was not heard, it was experienced. Bones vibrated, teeth shattered, hearts burst in perfect 7/8 time. The symphony UNLA Commissar, Varn felt his sanity unravel like a tapestry. He saw his childhood on Cadia, his mother's face, the first time he fired a lost gun, the day he earned his commissar's cap, all of it rewritten in violet ink. He clawed at his eyes, but the music was inside him now, rewriting his nerves. Lucius stood at the center of the courtyard, arms still raised, conductor of an orchestra of dying souls. The Noise Marines played their weapons like instruments, blast masters thundering bass lines, sonic blasters shrieking solos. The guardsmen danced until their joints dislocated, until their skins sloughed off in sheets, until they collapsed into piles of meat and ecstasy. Varn crawled toward Lucius on stumps of arms. "Please," he croaked, "make it stop." Lucius knelt again. "It never stops, Elias. That is the point." He pressed the lyre blade to Varn's throat. The edge kissed skin, drawing a bead of blood that sang as it fell. "But you," Lucius continued, "you resisted longer than most. That deserves a solo." The blade slid home. Varn's body arched, a final, perfect note. His soul tore free in a spiral of light, drawn into the lyre blade like smoke into a chimney. Lucius shuddered with pleasure as the commissar's essence merged with his own. A new scar, a new memory, a new verse in the endless poem. The symphony reached its climax. Fort Seraph exploded in a riot of color and sound, walls crumbling into kaleidoscopes, bodies fusing into sculptures of agony and bliss. When the last note faded, nothing remained but a crater lined with mirrored glass, each shard reflecting a different moment of the massacre. Lucius stood at the crater's edge alone. The Noise Marines were gone, their bodies dissolved into the music they had created. Vox Severance Doom's siren lay cracked and silent. Even the lyre blade was quiet, sated. He looked up at the stars. Somewhere beyond the veil, Slaanesh laughed, a sound like breaking hearts. "More," the god whispered. "Always more." The mirrors and the MST Lucius turned and walked into the warp rift that yawned behind him, footsteps leaving no trace. The mirrors shattered one by one, until the only reflection left was his own, smiling, flawless, and utterly alone. Behind him, the crater filled with violet mist. The bodies were gone, but their echoes remained, whispers of laughter, fragments of song, the wet sound of flesh remembering pleasure. The wind carried these echoes across Elysium 9, seeding them into the soil, the water, the very air. Somewhere, a child would be born with eyes the color of amethyst. Somewhere, a flower would bloom with petals that screamed when touched. Somewhere, a guardsman would wake from a nightmare humming a melody he could not name. The mist thickened, curling into shapes that were almost human, almost. A woman with no face danced with a man whose arms were violins. A child laughed as his shadow peeled away and began to sing. The mist did not dissipate, it grew, spreading like perfume, like plague. In the ruins of Fort Seraph, a single rose pushed through cracked ferrocrete. Its petals were black, its thorns sang in minor keys. When the wind touched it, the rose opened and revealed a heart of beating meat. The promise on Elysium 9, the wind carried a final melody, the faint, dying echo of a commissar scream, stretched across the void like a promise. Lucius was already gone, but his perfection lingered. In the ruins of Fort Seraph, the black rose bloomed wider, its song growing louder. The mist had become a storm, violet and endless, swallowing the horizon. Somewhere in the warp, Slaanesh smiled, already composing the next movement. The god's laughter was a chord that had no resolution, a note that would never fade. And in the silence that followed, the galaxy listened.